So I mean, I think this is probably the most tropey question I could possibly ask, but I think it's legitimate still because we're all trying to prepare by having a good life
Mhm.
for death. I think there's two pieces, right? Preparation for death is like have a good life and then also maybe even have a death plan. Whether or not you're
Yeah.
able to implement it. You
Yeah.
know, we were talking about it last night. How do you want to die? And I was like, well, I always, when I think of death in this country or in the United States, I think of like being hooked up to machines in a hospital and then flatlining. That's like how I think about
Mhm.
death.
What you see on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and also how I have
Yeah.
personally experienced death. Like
That's
that's how
true.
my sister died and that's how
Yeah.
my grandmother died and like hooked to machines and then it flatlined. And so uh when I think about how I would like to die, I had read about a village that at the end of somebody's life, everybody in the village comes and touches the person
Mm.
until they fall asleep.
Mm.
Right. Now that might be a nightmare for other people, but for me, the idea of like being basically petted,
Oh yeah.
right, until I fall asleep sounds pretty good to me. Like I'm like, I would like to be pet by everybody.
Yeah.
Like, can just everybody that I love come in and just touch me? I don't know if I'm gonna be able to have that, right? But if I have a death plan, quote unquote, I can communicate that to my loved ones and go, if it's at the end, that's what I'd like, please. You know, pet me into the next life.
Yeah.
Which I have seen. I've seen people I mean, of course, a lot of times when I do meet someone, and there are stages of hospice, I might meet someone in very early stages of hospice where they were proactively seeking the treatment, the care. And then most often it's like mid hospice, like mid crisis, a hospital visit or doctor's visit. And then there's a lot that's late hospice in which you're at the final,
Right.
the 11th hour and you get called in.
So yeah, so there's like different stages. You could probably figure some stuff out. But the question I was gonna ask that's tropey is what do people tend to regret?
Yeah. I mean, the first one, I'll go through the ones as they appear in my mind. But the first one is like, did I do good? Did I do a good job? And I think being understanding type and type systems can greatly help with this.
Because it means something a little different for every person.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as much as I'm able to read the person, I've been able to find out like, what are they looking for? You know, or retroactively, you know, I can ask the family questions. Tell me about your dad. Tell me about your dad, and try to be like, okay, what type is he? You know, like try to use that as a tool to figure out like, did I do right? Did I take care of my family?
Did I have a life of adventure?
Did I have a life? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say it's still unique as every person. I mean, it's that question cannot be templatized. I don't think.
That just made me think of yet another advantage to type is type helps you give yourself permission to live what you would personally define as
Success.
a success,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, did I do a good job?
Yeah.
Type is going to help you figure out what you mean, what a good job is
Yeah.
in life. And if you let it, it'll give yourself permission to go do that. Yeah.
Right. And I think it's really down to did I do a good job, because I have put my hands on a patient of mine. I've whispered in their ear, even as they're dying, I'm proud of you.
Mhm.
You did a good job. Your family is here and they are proud of you. You did a good job. And you'll watch them actually exhale.
Mhm.
And I've just concluded that that's what people are looking for.
Mhm.
Did I do a good job?
What other regrets do people have? Or is that basically it?
I think it's basically it. And
Okay.
then it gets compounded into what that means.
Right.
Does it mean like, did my son show up to say goodbye to me?
Right. Yeah.
Is my wife, did the grass get mowed and
Right.
my wife doesn't have to do it? Did
Yeah.
I establish a system in which my neighbor can mow the grass?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and in a lot of ways, it's just really unique to the person. Like, are they a performance-based person? It's a crazy story, but we had this one guy in a total comatose. He's a pastor. And as soon as we walked in the room from the coma, he lit up, Pastor Tom, nice to meet you, and laid back down. And it was like, yeah. And I told the family, I said, well, are you surprised?
Yeah.
I was freaking out. I was like, this is what he did all his life.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like muscle memory.
Absolutely. So why would he change at the end of life?
Yeah.
Even in a coma.
Absolutely. And so many stories of like the surges or the second chances, the last meal, people just coming back and expressing, what it's like to die, and then be able to share a little bit of like the in between stages. But there's that, yeah. I mean, everyone's different in that regard, but it's really,
Yeah.
I think, maybe distilled down to, did I pass?
Yeah.
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 It-
Right before I passed, did I pass?
Yeah.